people? Welcome to More with the Mac.
We've been talking about the basics. We've been talking about the fundamentals and how that basically once you learn those fundamentals, you can operate any app, any website, any place on the Mac. And this is true of iOS as well, and we're dealing with the Mac here. So any place on the Mac, as long as it is made reasonably accessible by the developer. Today, we're going to start learning a little bit later how to get into your apps, how to navigate these basics like the desktop and the dock and the launch pad and things of that nature. But before we even do that, we want to start out by talking to you about how to get help when and if you need it. Apple has done an absolutely fantastic job of providing a vast number of onboard resources that are built right into your Macintosh that allow you to get help quickly whenever you need them. The first one I want to talk to you about is that right out of the box, when you first set up your Mac, if you set it up yourself, because remember we said last week that it's entirely possible to set one up yourself. And even if not, the first time you turn on VoiceOver, you're going to get an announcement saying to you that if you already know how to use VoiceOver, you can do one thing. And I think once you're in the Mac OS, it's press the V key if you're already familiar with VoiceOver. And if not, you can press something else, whatever they tell you to press, and it will give you the Quick Start Tour. Now, this Quick Start Tour is very basic. It's just, 5, 6, 7 steps, something like that. But it guides you through a lot of these fundamentals that we've already talked about. The basics of navigating left and right, of activating an item with your Control Option space, or, in other words, VO space. Remember, the VO keys or the VoiceOver keys are either the combination of Control and Option or just the caps lock key. So if we say VoiceOver H, that means VOH, that means Control Option H or caps lock H. So anyway, they'll walk you through navigating with VO left and VO right, with, activating an item with VO space, in other words, Control Option space or caps lock space, and a few other things, just these basics, just these fundamentals like we've talked about. And that's a great tour, which can help a new user, especially to get started. Now, if you want to take that tour again later on, we'll tell you how to get to that momentarily. But I wanted to share with you, first of all, that it's available right away when you first set up a Mac or you first start using VoiceOver. Another help resource. So that one, if you're taking notes, that is the Quick Start Tour. Okay. Another very useful resource is the keyboard help. Now, there's a quick way to access keyboard help from anywhere at all. And it's Control Option K, or I suppose caps lock K would work also. VoiceOver K, VOK. And if you press that, and this works on your iPhone or your iPad as well, by the way, it turns on a special mode, a special keyboard help mode, where anything you press on the keyboard.
I was in the Quick Start guide this morning while you're doing that, and it's not so quick anymore. There's actually 20 panels that it takes you through. It takes you through a lot of different things, and it's very detailed and good information if you're a new user.
There is a problem, though, with the Quick Start tutorial to be aware of. There are certain parts of it where you actually have to close the tutorial to do the exercise. I've run into this with a couple of clients recently, and this is what Apple Accessibility told them was the workaround. So in case anybody is going through the Quick Start tutorial and they get to, there's a section about the dock, for example, going to the dock and navigating the dock, you actually have to close the Quick Start tutorial with the escape key, and then you do the exercise as it's explained to you.
Does it still go back to where you left off like it used to when you go back in there?
Yes, so when you restart it, it'll just pick up where you left off.
Yeah, I haven't been through it in the last 6 months, so I didn't even know about that bug. It didn't used to be like that. I don't know why it
does this, and Apple Accessibility didn't explain this to, because I've had 2 clients now that this has happened to, and I tried it on my own just to see if they were, smoking the ganja or something, and I had the same issue.
And I gather from the way you're describing it that it doesn't actually tell you that you need to press escape to close it.
No, it does not.
Okay.
So just be aware.
When they want to go back into it later, either because of the reason you described, or maybe they just want to do it again, what is the keyboard command to sort of retake the voiceover quick start tutorial?
It's the Control Option Command F8 or Caps Lock Command F8 if you're using Caps Lock as your modifier.
Okay. And I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, of course, and I might be, but I know there are some, and I think this is one of them, that if you have a touch bar, you can simply use the actual number 8. So you can do Control Option Command 8. And I believe that will work. There are a few that do work like that. And I think that may be one of them. Do you know?
Unless you have to include the FN key, maybe you have to include the FN key and that will work. I'm not sure. If I had my laptop fired up, I'd try it to let you know.
Okay.
But I don't.
Okay.
I want to point something out though, because it said it to me this morning when I was doing the demo in the recording, and it's amazing how much detail Apple takes. If you have the function keys not set as standard function keys, it will automatically tell you to add the FN key to that key combination. If you have them off or turned on, it won't tell you that. I tested it both ways, and the amazing thing about it is I'm not even using I'm not even using any of Apple's keyboards. I'm using the Logitech third-party keyboard. So it still recognized the fact that I didn't have my function keys set as standard function keys, and it told me if I wanted to come back to add the function key to that command. So if you ain't got to worry. No matter how you have your keyboard set, in this instance anyway, I don't know about anywhere else, but in this instance, when you're trying to get back to the quick start guide, VoiceOver will tell you what keys you need to push, whether it's the FN key with those other 3 or without the FN key, because Apple has implemented, if for lack of a better term, giving VoiceOver some artificial intelligence to know how your keyboard is set up.
We were talking about ways to get help with the onboard resources. And the second one I was just starting into is the keyboard help. So again, VoiceOver keys with the letter K. So either Control Option K or Caps Lock K. And when you're in that mode, as I was starting to say, you can press any key. If you press a VoiceOver command, like for example, Control Option right arrow, it will not only announce what it is, but it will tell you what it does. So you can press random letters and it'll say H, I, J, K, L, whatever. But when you press a VoiceOver command like Control Option right, it'll say something like moves to the next item on the screen or something, whatever. And you can also do this with gestures. We have not even begun to talk about the trackpad yet. I don't know if we'll do that today or next time, but we will. And so if you have your trackpad commander enabled, which if you're only starting out with us, you don't even know how to do that yet because we didn't teach you. But for our veteran users, you might already know, and we'll teach the rest of you soon. But if you have that enabled, you can even do gestures on the trackpad, and VoiceOver will describe when you're in this keyboard help mode what those gestures do. And something that's very important to remember about keyboard help is anything you press is not affecting anything else about the computer. So sometimes people are afraid to try things, which they shouldn't be, because there's usually no situation you can't get out of one way or another. But in this case, especially, you really don't have to worry, because everything you do is sort of isolated to this container of keyboard help, right? Where everything is inside of that and it's not affecting anything else about your Mac.
Well, another neat thing that it does is if you use the numpad commander or you set up keyboard commander shortcuts, they will work. They will work to identify it for you in keyboard help. So in case you forget how you might have customized numpad commander or what keyboard shortcuts you might have added to keyboard commander, it will be identified in keyboard help mode, which I think is pretty helpful because I tend to forget what keyboard shortcuts I've created with clients over the years.
And also, what is VOHH? Because I used to use that. I haven't used it in a while.
That's commands help. That takes you to the commands help where it has the categories. And
Right,
if you VO right arrow from each category, it gives you a list of the associated VoiceOver commands.
In it, if you forget, for example, VOK for keyboard help is pretty easy to remember, but maybe you forget, or maybe you forgot that VO command F8 is the quick start. All of those and more, a whole lot more, can be found in the basic VoiceOver help menu. Now, to get to the VoiceOver help menu, it's just VOH. So Control Option H as in help, or caps lock H. And this is a menu, which we've not spent a lot of time on menus yet, but we will. But basically, once you're in this menu, the technical way, you can VO up arrow and VO down arrow through the menu, and then VO space to activate what you have found. And a lot of folks don't even bother with that when they're in menus. They just press the down arrow and the up arrow by themselves and press return, because both will work in most menus. Again, if you're really being technical about it, you want to stick to that consistency. You'll add the VO keys up and down and then VO space, but really and truly, honestly, in a menu, you don't have to. And in this VoiceOver help menu, which you access with VOH, you're going to find keyboard help, VoiceOver quick start. You're going to find commands help, which is also accessed with VOH and then immediately another H. And that's where you're holding down the VO keys and you press H twice, right? And so this is also available in the VoiceOver help menu. And as John described very well, that's going to let you see a list of all of your commands, and you can see everything, what it does. You have VO in the VOH VoiceOver help menu, you have sound help. So you can actually go in there and listen to all of the different sounds that VoiceOver makes, those little boundary reach sounds and the little loading sound and, the refresh screen sound and all these different things. So you can understand better what they do by getting an actual description along with the sound as it's being played. And then there's the actual VoiceOver VoiceOver help system in there, and the VoiceOver user guide, which they used to call the VoiceOver getting started guide. If I'm not mistaken, I think they just call it the VoiceOver user guide now, but it's in there as well. There used to be a command, and maybe it's still there, but I don't remember if it's VO Shift H. I think it is, where it would immediately read the VoiceOver hint, if any, associated with whatever item you're on. Is that still present?
Yes.
Your brain is working today.
and now, if by default, folks, if you've not changed any of these settings, which we'll have to talk about how and where you change settings too, but we'll get to that. And of course, we have the wonderful tutorial that John did of your system settings. But anyway, if you haven't changed any of your VoiceOver settings, when you sort of let the VoiceOver cursor rest.
Matt, did you call it a hint or a tag? It's actually, there are two different things, because the hint is like you are currently on a button. To click this button, press Control Option Space, but then it has a little help tag that it usually reads after that as well. And I think, isn't that what it reads when you do VO Shift H?
VO Shift H reads the tag. VO Shift N reads the actual hint.
So I just did VO Shift N, and it said you're currently in a group, and it told me to interact, whatever. And then I just did VO Shift H, and it said this item has no help tag. So I mean,
so
it
for
just depends on where you are.
On the mute button for Zoom, if I do VO Shift H, it just tells me that I'm on the mute button. If I do VO Shift N, it gives me the additional information about, pressing VO space to activate it.
A lot of items have help tags like that, and the third-party app developers can even implement them. So it might say, mutes your audio or something when you're on the mute button, just as a little quick tidbit there. Whereas the hint is the detailed, you are currently on a button. To click this button, press Control Option Space. To navigate items within this table, press, whatever. And again, when we start talking about settings here, by default, both are enabled, hints and tags, and they'll automatically read after a few seconds of just leaving your VoiceOver cursor alone. And I always encourage, because especially on iOS, I don't, teach the Mac that often, but I'm going to take the same position with the Mac that I do with iOS, which is that it's personal preference. There's no right or wrong. All right. Nobody's going to condemn you, but my opinion, for what it's worth, don't disable these things. Okay. If you must not hear them, just ignore them and move on. You don't have to wait for it to stop speaking.
Or you can press Control.
You can press the control key to pause the speech right now, or if you know the next thing you're going to do. Like if you land on a button and you know you need to press VO space, just press it. You don't have to wait. But by disabling these things completely, you may cause yourself to miss out on something helpful, especially after major operating system updates, like we've just gone from Monterey to Ventura not all that long ago. And you may not know everything that's new. And these help tags and these hints can really be helpful to, help you to understand that. So if you don't need it, just move on. Now you can also change in your settings the length of time that the cursor has to sit. First menu in any menu bar on the Mac, if the app has a menu bar, it will always begin with the Apple menu. It is actually called the Apple menu. And if you do a Control Option M, even on the desktop, that's the first menu, Apple. And under Apple are these standard ubiquitous options like your system settings, about this Mac, options to shut down and to log out and to lock the screen and sleep and all these kinds of things. And then if you
restart.
And restart. And then if you VO right arrow instead of the Apple menu, you want to go to the next one. That's the one that Lynn is talking about. That's your application menu. It's going to take on the title of whatever app you happen to be in at the time. So if you're on the desktop, it's going to call itself Finder, because remember we described last week that the Finder is what the desktop actually is using. That's going to be the second menu, the application menu. If you're on the desktop, it'll be Finder. If you're in Safari, it'll call itself the Safari menu. If you're in Pages, well, you get the idea, okay? And then the rest of the menus to the right are dependent upon whatever app you're in. Now, oftentimes there's like a file, edit, view, but they can be different things depending on the app. There's usually a help menu in there. And again, you just VO left and right. And when you find a menu that you want, again, there's a couple of ways to do it. And for our veterans who want to know, the reason that it works a couple ways is because the system cursor, the system caret, can also navigate through menus. So if you just press the down arrow and the up arrow, you're moving the system cursor, and pressing return will work. A lot of people do that, and I've done it, and there's nothing wrong with it. The official way to do it with VoiceOver is to VO space to open the menu, VO up and down to go through the menu, and then VO space on whatever you want. But again, either way is going to work.
Well, the only note I want to just mention, cautionary note about that, is sometimes, not always, sometimes you have what they call alternative menu items. So
yes,
a sighted person would press the option key to get that item to show. So by doing VO arrows, if there are alternative menu items, it automatically will show them. So for example, in the Go menu in Finder, try navigating it with just the down arrow, and then switch to navigating with Control Option down arrow. And you'll notice there's a couple of additional items that will appear when you do it the VoiceOver way.
Right. And that is, as I said, the VoiceOver way is definitely the official way. And in my opinion, the best way to do it, because of a lot of reasons, that being one of them, what John just said, that's automatically going to give you those alternate items. And so I just want to mention, because John mentioned the word alternate items, I don't like to get out of sequence too much, but I do want to mention this. For those who are used to this and you are trying more advanced stuff and you hear something like alternate actions available or something like that, if you are familiar with iOS or iPad OS, and especially if you've taken a course from some of us, because we really drill this in, you are familiar with the long press. On an iPhone, it's a double tap and hold, or a VoiceOver user can actually just triple tap most of the time to get that same thing. And what that does is it brings up a context menu of options. And there is quite a need to be familiar with the long press gesture on iOS. It is really beneficial if you can get used to remembering to try a long press for different things. Well, the Mac has a way of doing this also. Now, there used to be, and it still exists, but it's not always going to give you the same benefits. There used to be a command. We've talked about VOM for the menu bar. Used to be that you'd add VO Shift M, and this would bring up the context menu. And it still does in certain situations. But what Apple really wants you to do now with VoiceOver, when you want to get an alternate list of menus, a context menu specific to something or alternate actions, is you want to do VO command space. Instead of just a regular VO space on something, VO command space brings up these alternate actions.
That goes in line with the same thing John said about the option navigation, navigating with the VO keys. That's a sometimey thing, because they want you to use VO command space, but it doesn't always work, and VO shift M will work better.
So it just depends on what you're on. Like notifications, for example, notifications, you definitely want a VO command space.
Yes.
Like we've talked about.
But like when I'm in mail and I want to move a message, VO shift M works better than VO command space.
VO command space, I imagine, would take you 2 or 3 steps, right? Because you'd have to say show alternate items or something like that. Right. So you can certainly try the VO shift M and the VO command space. It's just about trying these things and knowing what works best. But I will tell you, notifications, and we, again, we're just jumping around a little, but as we've talked about on iOS, for those who have taken our iOS course, because this is super important, a lot of VoiceOver users stereotypically don't really bother with notifications beyond just listening to what they say when they appear. And so all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, they'll come to me and they'll say, I have, 87 incomplete reminders that already occurred. How do I clear them? To which, I'm very tempted to say, well, you should have cleared them as they occurred. And then people will just clear them and not take an action on them. So did you know, for example, when you get a reminder, water the plants or, take out the dog, whatever, you have options without ever opening the reminders app. You have options to mark the reminder as complete right there from wherever you are, whatever app you happen to be in, whatever you're doing at the time. You have the option to mark the reminder complete. You have the option to snooze the reminder, like say, remind me again in an hour or in a day or, tomorrow morning, whatever. You have all of these options without ever opening the reminders app, because notifications are actionable. And this is true on iPhone, iPad, Mac, Apple Watch, all of these devices. Notifications are actionable. And that's one example of where your VO command spacebar is extremely useful, because if you get a notification that pops up, you can VO command space on it to get those alternate actions. And one of them is to clear. If you really don't want to do anything else with it, you can just dismiss it, But again, check it out, because a lot of times when notifications appear, you will have these alternate options available. So remember those. VO shift M is one option, and also VO command space. If you're looking for contextual options, try both. If you press VO M twice, in other words, VO MM, you will be immediately taken to the status menus, which have gotten much fewer over the years because there's now a control center, but you can customize what's in the status menus. I'm trying to think by default, because I just set up my Mac as new the other day, and I think it has maybe the Wi-Fi, the battery.
It has Bluetooth. So I can hear the battery of my keyboard, which is Bluetooth. I can hear the battery of the level of the my MacBook.
Right.
Any other
volume? It has the volume.
AirPod.
Yeah, and it has volume control, and then it has
volume controls, and you can choose if
search.
Some of these things, you can change whether they appear in the status menus or not. But one of them that it definitely has is your notification center and your control center. So just like if you have an iPhone or an iPad or an Apple TV, an Apple Watch, and you're familiar with control center, you have a variety of controls that are available to you in the Mac control center also. Same kind of stuff. Your Wi-Fi, your Bluetooth, your, I think probably AirDrop, your volume, your AirPlay, screen mirroring and AirPlay audio, and all of these different options are available in Control Center, which you can VO MM, and then you can VO left and right until you find Control Center, and you can VO space on it. And so there's a lot of these different options. Another option that can sometimes appear in the status menus, if you enable it, is what they call fast user switching. So if you live in, if you have family who shares your Mac with you, and you live with your family and they all, have an account on the Mac, it is possible to enable this fast user switching where you just go up to the status menu and pick somebody's name and they can log into the Mac. Now, the key thing to understand about fast user switching is it does not log you out. It lets you logged in while it lets somebody else logged in. And so there are people who would say that this is not as secure, which it's not. If you really want a very, very secure, very private environment, you won't enable fast user switching. You'll make it so that one person has to log out before the next one can log, in. But again, that's personal preference, and that can appear also when you have multiple.
The fast switcher is actually there by default. You have to remove it.
If you don't want it, you have to remove it.
Yeah, it's like one of those things, like on the iOS in the control center, that you can customize it. There's some things that are there by default, but it's one of them. Like if you want time machine, you have to put that there. But like fast user switching, if you have more than one user, it's automatically there.
All right. So you've got your new Mac. You learned how to log in, how to turn VoiceOver on. How do I get into my apps? How do I get Safari? How do I get music? How do I get, notes or pages or calendar? And
everything you just named becomes built into the Mac. So, it'd be different if you're talking about something like, actually, you're right. I'm wrong. Pages doesn't come, but you have to go to the App Store and get it. So that I did mess up on that one. But Safari and Notes, that is already on your dock. So.
Right. So there's about 52 different ways. I'm being a bit hyperbolic, but there's a bunch of different ways to launch an app on your Mac. Okay. Let's just go through some of the very simple ones first, and then I'll spend a little more time on the other ones. Now, first of all, if you've set up Siri, which again, it's going to walk you through doing that by default, you can ask Siri. Now, you can do this in two different ways. If you've set up the allow, the wake phrase, hey, I'll pause there, but Siri, that phrase, you can use that. And there is a command which can be changed, but by default, if you press and hold Command spacebar, you get Siri. So you can say, launch pages, launch notes. You can use Siri just as you would on any other Apple device to open an app. Another way, remember, you're on the desktop, and by default, the desktop comes with nothing on it. If you plug in certain external drives and stuff, they may show up, but really your desktop is just a blank slate kind of. You got the menu bar, so your apps aren't going to be there.
And that's one of those settings that can be changed too, because when I plug in external drives, it doesn't show up on my desktop. I don't know if anybody remembers, but my desktop and my dock my dock's not empty. I have a couple things on there that I access enough that I need them there, but I don't need a commander for it. But my dock is completely empty. And correct me if I'm wrong, John, wasn't it that Tim or somebody else that told us the more stuff you have on your desktop, the slower your Mac's going to take to load because it has to fire all that stuff up when it's coming on?
Yes. Yeah. It's not so much a bigger deal if you have 16 gigs of RAM, but you got to remember that when you boot a Mac, everything on your desktop gets loaded into RAM. So if you have applications or photos, you got to keep that in mind because that's eating away at your total RAM. Now, again, if you have 16 gigs, it's not a big deal. But if you're still, working with 4 or 8 gigs, you don't want to end up going over to swap memory, to keep your Mac up and running.
Right. And truthfully, even if you have M1 or later, it's not as big of a deal because M1, Apple Silicon does a better job of managing memory. But I still believe I don't like putting stuff on the desktop. Again, this is personal preference. Everything I share with you, everything we share here about how to open apps becomes personal preference. We just show you some different ways to do it. Now, one of the more common ways, especially for VoiceOver users, is to use the dock. And again, if you're familiar with iPhone and iPad, you know what the dock is, but the dock appears, it can actually be moved to different locations, but I think by default, it's along the bottom of the screen.
Yes.
And it has two sides. It's got on the Mac, it's got your favorite apps, which if you aren't sure of what your favorite ones are, Apple will take the liberty, on a new Mac, they'll already put the ones there that they think are the most important or most popular or what have you. And then the right side of your dock has access to recent apps and documents and the trash and things of that nature, which we'll get into. But a lot of people put the items they most frequently use on the dock. And you can quickly access the dock with VoiceOver by pressing VOD. In other words, Control Option D as in dock, or Caps Lock D as in dock. And when you are on that dock, you're going to see whatever's on it. So, you know, if you have Safari, if you have Notes, if you have, TV app or QuickTime Player or music, all of those things, you can just VO left and right and then VO space on whichever one you want. Now, if you're working with sighted folks, or if you yourself are sighted or partially sighted or whatever you want to call it, one of the important things about the dock to keep in mind is that the more stuff you put on the dock, the less easy it's going to be to read, because everything's going to get smaller in order to fit more items. This is true on the iPad as well. And the same is true if you put too much stuff on your Mac's dock. Now, obviously, it's going to hold more, but it's still one of those things where I don't personally use the dock except to get to Launchpad, and I really wouldn't even have to do that. But, you know, again, it's personal preference. The dock is very popular because for many people, there are, just a handful of apps that they use every single day. And so they put those on the dock, and that's all they need, Now, the next way that I'd like to talk about is I'll save my favorite for not last, but second to last, because the last one's going to be probably Cliff and John's favorite. I can't really speak for John, but I know it's Cliff's favorite. But we'll get to that. But the third way, or fourth, whatever number we're on, this is sort of what I would call the legacy way of doing things. It's not really probably the way most people want to do it now. But years and years ago, before there were all these other methods, you could directly access the applications folder on your Mac. And guess what? You still can. And it used to be years ago that there was your hard drive actually had its own icon right on the desktop. You can still show that if you want to, but most people don't. And it's not there by default. And it's called Macintosh HD out of the box. And so you could double click on that, and you could double click on applications, and there was every single app that you had, and you could just open it. Okay. And if you want to get to the applications folder quickly, there is a keyboard command. It's not a VoiceOver command. It's a Mac OS command. It's Command-Shift-A for applications. Command-Shift-A. And that will jump you immediately. It'll open the applications folder. And there are times, we won't get into that today, but there are times that this can be beneficial. Okay. But again, this is an old way. If you've been using, the Mac since, Leopard or Tiger or, something prior to that, you might remember this because that's how you used to do it. Okay. We don't really do it that way much anymore, but it is an option. Now, my favorite way is the Launchpad. The reason it's my favorite way is because it looks a lot like iOS and iPad OS, which is what I prefer and what I use every day. The Launchpad is a full screen environment that brings down a grid of apps just like you have on your iPhone and your iPad. And it has folders and everything too, if it needs to. But this is every single app that you have, just like the applications folder, but unlike the dock. So any app that's installed on your Mac will show up in the Launchpad. Now, the Launchpad is available in the dock. Okay, so that's usually what I do is I VOD and then I VO space on Launchpad. There's also, I think my touch bar has a Launchpad option on it. And I think if you have a keyboard, if you have function keys, it used to be the F4 key.
F4 does work, yes. That
F4 does still work.
Yes.
Okay. And this, as I said, brings up a grid of apps so you can move left, right, up, and down with the VO keys. But that's the Launchpad. It's got all of your apps. Choose the one you want and VO space on it. So that's another option. So we have the dock, we have Siri, we have the applications folder, we have the Launchpad. And then the one that I know is Cliff's favorite, the one that this is how he launches apps typically, is through Commanders. And we're not going to get fully into Commanders today. We will. And that's going to be Cliff and John because that's their area. And
I have another one.
You have another way to open an app besides that?
Yeah.
And what is that?
Spotlight search.
That's a great one. And is it, you just press and release I know Command space, if you hold it, is Siri, but is that how you open Spotlight?
Yeah, just
press,
command
Yeah.
quick press a
You have
command
to-
quick
space.
press it.
Yeah, you have to do it real fast. And you can type in the first couple letters and hit enter.
And Spotlight search, Lynn, I'm glad you brought that up because, we have Spotlight on our iPhones and iPads also. A lot of us don't use it because we can just use Siri, but Spotlight is actually quite powerful. Like, you have to remember that Spotlight existed before Siri and did some of the same stuff. I mean, not nearly as much as Siri, but some of the same stuff. For example, I can go into Spotlight search and I can type, I don't know exactly the phrasing I'd have to use, but like 8 gallons to cups, and it will convert that. Or I can type a mathematical calculation and it will give me, and this is true on iPhone and iPad also, or I can type local restaurants or local movie results, and it searches the web, it searches everything on your Mac. So Spotlight is actually really powerful. And yes, in both cases, one of the things it can be used for is to open apps. Now, when John and Cliff do get into the commanders, I mean, for example, there's a few default ones that are set up, right, guys? Like the right option with the letter M opens the mail app, right?
Safari, S for Safari.
And right option S for Safari. And these, you have to turn on commanders. And once you do, so a commander is basically like, we have this basic set of commands and gestures that we've been teaching you. We haven't taught you the gestures yet, but we will. And even that requires a commander, really. But you have this basic set of, keyboard commands and stuff that you can use to control VoiceOver. And then a commander lets you take things to a whole new level. A keyboard commander lets you create custom keyboard commands to control different areas of the Mac.
Since we're talking about keyboard commanders, and that the fact that there's default ones like option T for time and option S for Safari and option M for mail, I think there's another one, option X, I think will capture the last, will do a screenshot or something. I forgot what it is. I disabled mine because I don't use it. But anyways, there's a shortcut way of turning on and off keyboard commanders. I just talked to Matt about this yesterday because there's an app that I use where it uses the option key along with other key sequences that I have locked up in Commander. So I actually have to turn my keyboard commander off. And that keyboard shortcut is VoiceOver keys. So option, control, and the shift key with the letter K. And it's a toggle. So option or VoiceOver shift K will turn it on, and then VoiceOver shift or VoiceOver keys shift K will turn it off. So it's a toggle on and off. And so again, that's VoiceOver keys shift and the letter K to turn it on and then turn it back off as a toggle. So both pressing it again will turn it back off.
And I will tell you this, that it's personal preference. I don't normally use keyboard commander. The only commander I use is the trackpad one normally, but I did turn the keyboard commander on the other day because of a handy new option that they've added to VoiceOver in Ventura, which we will demonstrate when we get into editing text and writing and editing on the Mac. And they call it the text checker. And it requires the keyboard commander to be turned on, and then you press right option with the letter D as in Delta. It has
you
to
sure
be
you haven't
right...
found a trackpad command for that yet?
No, I have not yet. I don't know that there is one, but it has to be the right option and the letter D, and it does some really cool stuff. I don't want to get into it today because it's, a little further on than where we are, but it really helps you to find misspelled words and extra spaces between words and stuff. So I wanted to try that with, and I needed to enable commanders, which you can do from your VoiceOver utility and settings, but you can also do it using the keyboard command that Cliff stated, so that you can do that from anywhere on your Mac. So we'll get more into that as we go. But my point in bringing it up now was to say that it's another way to open apps, because Cliff, do you have a commander for every app that you use on a regular basis?
The ones that I use the most, yes.
So whenever you want to go into, I don't know, let's just say hypothetically, you want to go into notes or you want to go into music or pages, you have a commander then that you don't even have to go to the dock or the launch pad or anything in order to find the app that you want.
My commander for pages is option E, and for music It used to be called iTunes, and I never changed it, so it's option I. Plus the fact that mail is our M is already taken up by mail anyway. I probably could do Shift M, but I don't even open my music app on my phone though. I mean, not my phone, but my Mac. I very rarely open it up. If I open it up, I'm opening it up just to update my library to make sure it syncs from what I've done on my phone.
Is there any reason, if I'm, primarily a iPhone or iPad Apple Music user, is there anything I can do with music on my Mac that I can't do on the iPhone and the iPad? Because it's about the one and only thing that you really can't do on iPhone and iPad that you need a Mac for if you're going to do this.
That the only thing that you would need your Mac for is if you have music on a CD and you wanted to import it. That's
right.
And
you have music
or plug a external drive in. Other than that, there's absolutely nothing you can't do with music on your phone that you can't do on your Mac.
Exactly. So that's the only thing, guys. Your mother's cousin's roommate's middle boy. You want to put that in your music library, you have to use your Mac to do that. But most anything else, I wouldn't even. I mean, honestly, it's personal preference. But as an Apple Music subscriber, we get 70 million, 90 million songs. Pretty much anything that's publicly available, you're going to find there. So you don't even need to bother with that. But people ask me, what are things like mission control and related to that expose and that sort of thing. Can you give a description to folks of what that is? A lot of times I think probably voiceover users don't even need it, but at least to know what it is.
Well, first, it's not really a voiceover specific thing. And I try to, I don't want to say dissuade, but I try to encourage clients to not even really worry about it. It's more visual. Basically, as a quick historical thing, there used to be different features called expose and spaces way back when. Apple sort of combined it into this one feature called mission control. So, for example, mission control has different modes, all applications and all windows, for example. Now, the problem with this is from a voiceover standpoint, you'll accidentally trigger it because if you use control option as your modifiers, the control key with the arrow keys, particularly the up and down arrow keys, are the keyboard shortcuts to open up mission control.
And that's the main reason why I disable it, because I was
you can disable it in system settings if it really becomes an issue for you. But most of the time you can just hit the escape key if you accidentally trigger it. But just to kind of summarize, all application modes, control up arrow, shows the user every single application that is currently open on the Mac with the associated windows in sort of a visual cascade format. So the sighted individual can quickly use the mouse and just click on a specific window of an application and jump right to it. Now, from the voiceover standpoint, you can do it. It's levels of interaction that are involved, and it's kind of defeats the whole purpose. If you're a keyboard shortcut user, you can just use Command Tab to switch between apps. You can use Command Accent to switch between open windows of apps. Now, the all windows mode is only useful if you have an application that has like multiple windows. So let's say Safari, you're Christmas shopping for somebody or family or whatever, and you have, Walmart.com, Amazon, Target, and you're comparing prices. So like if you want to buy Cliff another keyboard. So maybe there's 5 different prices on 5 different websites. So all windows mode will show you all the windows of Safari in a cascade form. And again, the sighted user can just take the mouse and click. So again, we don't need that because we have, the window chooser menu, or we can use Command Accent. So, I mean, I just try to convince people it's not necessary. I mean, you do get some people who come over who had vision and they feel that connection still, so they want to use it. So that's fine, but for the, I just don't think it's important for a voiceover user.
As John mentioned, a few different things which we're going to teach as we progress, like window chooser and application chooser, which are voiceover features. And then you also have an app switcher on your Mac, which is Command Tab. And you can literally hold down the Command key and keep pressing the Tab key and releasing it. And you will cycle through every open app, all the open apps on your Mac. And the other thing is, with an example like Safari, where you might have 7 different tabs open in order to, do your Christmas shopping or whatever. Even that, you can interact with the tabs area of Safari, right, John? Just like on your
Yes.
iPad or iPhone.
Yep.
So you don't even really have to use mission control for that either. Now, since John brought up something called window chooser and application chooser, I do want to tell you about those, because that's another way besides command tab. These are voiceover specific now. Okay, you have to have voiceover on to use application chooser and window chooser. And it's the same kind of thing. Like if you have multiple apps open, you can press, is it Control Option F1, or am I missing a key there, guys?
It's
Yeah, no,
command.
it's Control Option F1
Control,
for the application. Well, Control Option F1
Announce current.
current
Right.
application. If you do it
Right.
2 times in a row, that opens up the application chooser menu.
And then
Exactly.
the Windows is F2.
F2.
And this is one case where I can say definitively, because I've done it. Now, maybe it is a setting that's already set and I wasn't aware of it, but I can tell you with a touch bar, you can just use the number 1 and number 2 in lieu of, instead of the F1 and F2. So if you got a touch bar, just Control Option 1.
I meant to ask you the other day, aren't you able to hold down the function key or FN, globe, whatever you want to call a key, and use 1 through 12 as the function keys on the touch bar models?
Well, yes. Yeah, you can enable that feature and disable it, but also, as I say, in this case, you don't even have to hold down. At least I don't. And maybe there's a setting that's allowing that I'm not even aware of, but I don't even have to hold down the FN or the globe. I just Control Option 1 is exactly the same as doing Control Option F1 for me. But it's when you do that, as John said so well, it announces the current application. And then if you press it a second time, it brings up the list of all open apps, and you can VO up and down through the one you want VO space to immediately go to it. Similarly is the window chooser with F2 or number 2 on a touch bar Mac. And again, Control Option and that number F2 or whatever, that announces the current window, and doing it a second time brings up the window chooser. Now, I want to tell you about a reason that you might need to know this, and a reason that I made sure I brought it up right now. Sometimes, so it's useful. The window chooser is useful in the example that John gave, where you have multiple windows open. But sometimes a window will open and you don't know how to get to it, like a dialog box that somehow appears behind the currently open app. And you can tell that it's there because every now and then you hear that it needs attention, or you hear this little boop every few seconds, boop, and there's this thing running. It's indicating there's something that needs attention. Now, sometimes that's a notification. You can Control Option N for notifications. You can get to that. But sometimes it's not. Sometimes it is a dialogue that is appearing in the current app, but it's not the active window. So you've got your document open, but in the background, Pages is trying to ask you something, and it's important. So that's a great indicator that you have an open dialog box or something in the background that needs your attention. And again, the way to get to it then is Control Option F2, F2. And that brings up the window chooser, and you can find the system dialog or whatever it may be that is open, and you can then VO space on it to go to it and do whatever it is you need to do.
If you're a new VoiceOver user to the Mac, or you're coming from Windows, please find the YouTube video on either my playlist, which is Mac OS Ventura, or the Mac for the Blind playlist. They're both on my page. It's called Mac for the Blind fall course number something, but it's called System Settings. Listen to that recording. John walks you through how system settings are laid out, how to find things, because they're not where you're going to think they are.
We're mentioning the dock, and if you have a lot of programs in there that you're not necessarily using, did you say there was a way to take them out? Because I didn't hear it if you did.
VO Shift M, arrow down until you hear options, VO right arrow, and the first option will be removed. You hit enter and you're done. It'll say whoosh, and it'll be gone.
With JAWS, if you're using a laptop keyboard, you've got certain commands. But if you've got a keyboard that's got a numpad, you can use that for certain commands, like within documents or what have you. I was wondering, is that the case with Apple as well? I mean, if you've got a
yes
numpad,
and no. Yes and no, because by default, no. By default, there's no difference between the commands on a MacBook versus a desktop Mac. It's all Control and Option or caps lock, and then those various things. But Just like there's a keyboard commander and a trackpad commander, there is an option of enabling a numpad commander for those who have it, which can give you alternative ways of doing the same thing or different things. But it's not enabled by default, and you never have to use it. The default set of sort of fundamental keyboard commands is exactly the same, regardless what type of keyboard you're using.
I've got a question on something that one of you mentioned tonight, the desktop, about extra apps and all that, because I don't like a cluttered desktop. It annoys me.
No.
But I wonder, is it the same with aliases? Like, and I know that's a little bit more advanced, but I have to go into folders inside folders inside folders, and I like shortcuts. I really like shortcuts. So I do aliases and keyboard commander and all that kind of stuff. So did the aliases take up as much sort of RAM or resources?
The alias is just a shortcut. That's all it is.
There
It's
is
not taking up nothing. I personally hate them, but hey, to each their own. But yeah, alias is yeah.
Okay.
I think I've used them a couple times on the desktop, so I don't absolutely hate them. I just don't need them as much as some.
This class here, Mac, will resume on the 16th, unless we announce something else. Check out YouTube and stay in touch.